This is Codified Wisdom. Conversations with leaders sharing what experience has taught them and what they know now that they wish they knew earlier. Hosted by Eric Eager, CEO and co-founder of 4Impact Data.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to Codified Wisdom, where we explore the journeys and lessons, the great leaders have in shaping where they're at in their business career. And I can tell you, I'm excited to have today's guest, Kacee Johnson. She is a financial strategist and innovation leader. And to be honest, she helped guide and mentor, through the CPA Accelerator for one of my ventures. So that's how I got to meet Kacee and realized that, she is innovative. Her history is working with emerging tech companies. And she built the CPA.com Startup Accelerator program. And you would expect, she's recognized as one of the accounting today's most influential people in accounting, and is one of the most powerful women in accounting. And so, before she became one of the profession's leading voices in technology innovation, she has a journey that shaped curiosity, resiliency, perspective, and leadership. So, man, I am excited to have her on so that she can share her story like we've done with other great leaders on here. So, Kacee, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being on. And before we get started, let's start by asking, kind of where'd you grow up and what were some of your early influences in life that kind of shaped this curiosity and drive that kind of began you on your journey and where you're at today?
Well, hi, Eric. Always good to see you. And thank you so much for having me. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, and I lived there until I finished my undergraduate degree. My family all still lives there. So I end up back in Tucson about 2 to 3 times a year. Bear down, go Wildcats. It's March Madness. We're coming in hot. But as far as early influencers that shaped kind of curiosity and drive, I would have to say my mom. My dad died when I was young, and she was a single mom with me and my brothers. She was figuring it out, and she went back to school in her 40s. And through all of her struggles, as well as her comeback, it definitely shaped my drive and showed me it's never too late to start over.
Well, and that had to be some, inspiration. I mean, going back at 40, that had to leave you with an impression of, hey, why not? If she can do it, I can do this stuff.
And I mean, I didn't I finished after college. I went and I did my MBA. And so I didn't do any kind of formal, going back that way until last year. I did an executive program at Harvard Business School, but I've definitely hit the reset button a few times and gone out on my own to be independent and start new businesses. And I think seeing my mom at such a young age start over, it definitely helped shape some of that courage and confidence in myself that it's never too late to do that.
Well, going back and, going from high school to college, what did you go to school for? What did you originally, I always like asking people like this because it's amazing to me just the diversion and where their paths change. So what did you go to school for? And, and tell us a little bit of where did you start you wanted to go? And then, and could you imagine working in technology and where you're at today?
Yeah, it's funny. The first few years, which is fine when you're a freshman, sophomore in college, I didn't really know. And then I was pre-law, but I did a double major of English Lit and political science. And then I did this summer internship at a law firm, and I was like, I don't want to be a lawyer now. What am I going to do with an English Lit and political science degree? That's, what are you going to do with that? So, but I just don't like conflict and that constant life of whether you're, arguing in a courtroom or you're supporting your clients and sending ceases. It was just too much for me. I was like, this is just so opposite of my nature. I am the most positive unicorns and rainbows kind of person. So I got my MBA instead. And I found that I really gravitated in that program towards more of the tech and the marketing side.
So all right, so you get your degree,
Mhm.
and where did you start? What was your first role? And then, kind of walk us through that as you're
Yeah.
starting your life journey.
I mean, my first real role after I got my MBA, I had moved out to San Diego. I was in my 20s, and back then you still found jobs on Craigslist, not to like
It's
date
okay.
myself or anything here, but you still found jobs on Craigslist. I saw a ad for a director of marketing role for a cloud computing company. I had no idea what that meant. It's a company called Cloud9, which later got acquired.
Yeah.
Um, and it was tiny at the time. We had like 87 users, and I quickly became the executive vice president. I was an owner. We had a successful exit, but it grew to over 20,000 users, and all primarily, I should say, this is how I got into the accounting space. Our
Yeah.
primary focus was accounting firms, legal firms, or other professions that had similar um, kind of requirements.
Wow. So diving into that a little bit, to go
Well,
from 87 to thousands of users.
20,000 in sub 5 years. It was incredible. I mean, we were like this, but you have to understand. So we were building. First, it started as like hosting, right? Old school QuickBooks hosting service. But then we changed. We saw, well, that's not going to be the model because Intuit's going to get QuickBooks Online right, which they did. And you
Yeah.
saw it get improved very quickly and get better and better. So we knew that wasn't the future. So we started building custom virtual servers for firms. So they just got completely digital. It didn't matter how many offices, didn't matter where people worked. And we just helped them completely get rid of their servers, and we handled their security, we handled their data management. um, so it just kind of exploded, and it was a perfect time because then we started to see the writing on the wall when they would come up for renewals. And back then, building custom virtual servers, when you think about supporting those, you have to think about at the application level. And we would start to see all these applications come off because they were moving to a SaaS version of it, right? And so we saw the writing on the wall, and that's when we decided to exit because we realized we were a stepping stone to true cloud.
Well, let's dive into that a little bit more, because you're fresh out of college. You show up in San Diego, which I love San Diego, by the way. It's an amazing city. Um, and then right out of a sudden, you go from there. I mean, talk about reading the manual as the plane, and maybe not even plane, it's like literally a launching pad.
We were
Uh,
building the plane as we were going.
I used to always refer to that you're like duct taping the plane, while you're building it, and you're hitting turbulence, and you hit smooth air, and then you hit turbulence again. Tell me about that experience of, like, did you ever have days like, holy cow, this is amazing, but how did you manage kind of the stress level of all the stuff coming at you so fast? And you had an MBA, so I'm sorry, and then with that, you're having to apply all this theoretical knowledge that you case studies and you do all this in school, but now you're in it. You're in the middle of all this stuff. How did you manage just going through that? Was it, just talk about the stress level? How did you manage that? And how did you absorb all that knowledge so quickly?
Well, I threw myself in very like feet first into both the tech to understand it because I had to educate on it because this wasn't even well known to who I was trying to sell to. I had to throw myself into the professions, completely understand accounting, legal, et cetera, that I was talking to. Um, and as far as like building the plane while you're going, we didn't take on, especially back then, it wasn't as big, but we didn't take on a bunch of investment money. We had a lot of people contact us because they saw how fast we were growing. But
Yeah.
we were, especially in the beginning, we were working off shoestring budgets. So scaling was very critical. We partnered with a lot of IT and technical groups to help us with our capacity planning. And I'll be honest, at one point, we were selling so many custom virtual servers and our lead time was getting longer and longer, obviously, to build out, that we actually like paused, not stop selling, but we just kind of paused to give realistic expectations to the customers. And I think that's the best thing you can do, because if you don't, and then you're rushing it, you're going to have a subpar deployment, and you're going to piss your clients off. And we just would have preferred we had a standard, we wanted to keep at that. Let's slow down on the marketing and the sales, which was just on fire, which is unusual that you do, until we could ramp up on the tech side to truly support.
Well, and then, I mean, talk about it like a rocket ship ride in like 5 years. You get to a transaction, okay, which is, anybody's gone through a transaction. Sometimes they're great and wonderful and they just go great. Some of them, it's grueling. Going through the transaction, you get through it. Then it was, did you take any time off? Did you immediately jump into, somebody called you up and you went into the next entrepreneurial journey? Or you just kind of explore, life is great and I'm going to take some time to think about what I want to do next?
I had actually already started doing consulting, and I knew that my next thing was going to be an advisor. So I had already started to build and launch. It was called Blue Ocean Principles. I loved in business school the book Blue Ocean Strategy. It just resonated with me. So I built a consultancy firm that was primarily focused on advising the vendors who sold to and through the accounting profession, as well as a few in the legal space. So I did that for a number of years, and I want to say 5-6 years. And then CPA.com, which is where I most recently was employed, they became one of my clients, and I was working with them and then joined there full time. So my journey was a little bit different than most in the space. Like, I went from tech solution side to consultant to all of the vendors. And I was working with everybody from tiny startups up to Fortune 500, like the big suites and guys in the space, and everybody in between. So, and then obviously working with and at the association.
Wow. Did you, while you were going through that journey, was there any mentors or anybody that you kind of leaned into?
Oh gosh, I was so incredibly fortunate, Eric. Very early on, like I want to say in my first year of being at Cloud9, my CEO, Rob Chandler, he had great relationships with Greg LaFollette, Randy Johnston, and Doug Sleater. So he introduced me to them. And those three guys, I had like the trifecta of mentors, right? And they really just helped me to understand the profession and how my strengths could add value to the community.
We've actually had Randy on the show previously, and I absolutely agree with what a great, you did get the perfect storm of mentorship and people that just give that experience and wisdom and knowledge to so many people. So a shout out to them today, because they still do it today. And
I just talked with Greg last week. Yes.
And so for those listening, they are great people, and if you have any chance to interact with them, they're worth any bit of advice and wisdom they can throw at you. Take a notebook out, or get your I don't know if anybody uses a notebook anymore, but take some notes, because it's worth it. So let's talk about that. So you've got this incredible journey, because you jump in, you go tech, you go through this rocket ship ride, then you get into marketing with Fortune 500 tech. And obviously you see all this experience from these poor little tech startups that had like no money. And like, how much is that pencil or that marketing going to cost, all the way to Fortune 500 video production
Massive
campaigns.
Budgets.
Yeah.
Burning cash.
So you're switching your mindset, and then CPA.com says, hey, we'd like for you to come over here and help us. And tell me about like what it was like, because CPA.com did a lot of changes and moves, and it's evolved over time. Tell us about your early years there and what that was like when you jumped into that and kind of gave up or downshifted, blue ocean a little bit.
Yeah, well, it was actually Greg. He was planning his retirement, so he recruited me to come over to absorb in his role and to work with them. And so it was much more on the innovation side as well as um, really kind of leading like the tech ecosystem relationships. It was so funny because I was a marketer at heart, but I actually never did anything marketing related at CPA.com. But Greg had built for CPA.com an executive roundtable, which is this incredible event that brings together the C-suite of the tech companies building for the profession. And it's an invite only, very exclusive event. That they hosted other events that are all very exclusive as well. Thought leader dinner. He had launched the first blockchain symposium. So all of those kinds of things was my first entry point of how I worked with and at CPA.com. And then when I joined full time and closed up Blue Ocean Principles, then the role just obviously expanded to be much more.
Well, and then as you're going through that, and then you start to get into the startup accelerator, and so and we were one of your baby tech companies, so we're very appreciative of our time. And what was that like? You started to do this, and you've got all these, and we had innovation going on, but then the last few years, all of a sudden, private equity and all this stuff has said, it woke up and started pouring in. And so walk us through a little bit of the kind of early years in the innovation, because, .com and all that a long time ago, but like nobody wanted to talk about counting, now it's like, now they're like the cool kids on the block. Seems like everybody wants to be in an accounting and AI space. Walk us through that kind of evolution, and what was it like being able to see, mentor, coach, and walk through these incubators and seeing them kind of go out and kick them out of the nest and see how they succeed in the world and seeing the successes. Walk us through that kind of journey you went through.
I have to say that was 100% my most favorite initiative in working at the association, just because my backbone was from startups. So I have a special place in my heart for them, but you really did get an early look at to what the builders are making. And so many of those applicants are practitioners who weren't getting necessarily what they wanted out of their tech vendors. So they went out and built it themselves. And so maybe they didn't necessarily understand the fuller, bigger picture of the profession. Like they knew the area that they worked in, and understanding how to market, sell, build for is a very different role. There's always a sense of pride whether it was in the accelerator program or, even to this day, I work with startups all the time in advisory or board roles. And I can't explain how proud I am that I had even the smallest part in their journey and in their success. And it's not always easy. A lot. This, Eric, like being a startup is tough. And especially in today's market, it's funny. When I had Blue Ocean Principles, Accountex was one of my clients, and I built this massive ecosystem, diagram, infographic for them. And it was broken down by categories. And there was like 800 vendors in there. And the last time I ever updated it was 2018. Okay. That's how old this thing is.
Yeah.
If you were to do that today, Randy Johnson and I were just talking about this, it would be 2,500 vendors. It's just exploded so much. And I think that there's a few reasons for that. FinTech was blowing up at the same time, but I think the cost of development has gone down so much. And somehow like accounting became cool again or something, and everybody wants to build for the space. So it's been an incredible journey. It's a great program too, by the way, so I love giving it a plug. I saw the association just launched this year's cohort, so I got to take a look at those companies. A few of them looked familiar, but that they'll be able to surface so much new stuff for the community.
Yeah, that's right. I like to say we're bringing sexy back to the accounting tech profession, but people look at me funny especially my wife. My wife rolls her eyes.
You went Justin Timberlake. I was thinking about that Lainey Wilson song, but yes, either way.
So, going through that, was there any point, was there a decision that you felt like risky at the time that, kind of changed the trajectory of, or could have changed the trajectory where you're at today? I mean, did you have to think through the decision? And was there any risk of really, because you had your own entrepreneurial business, you're running your own practice, and then CPA.com, and Greg could call you up and go, "Hey, I want you to come do this." Was there any time where you had to think about it and go, I don't know if I want to do that, or was it just, I'm diving in, I love it, no questions asked, here we go?
I think my personality is that once I make a decision, it takes me a long time to get there, but once I make a decision, I'm pretty rooted in it, and I like to see it through. So starting my own company, whether it be the first time or now this time, it's not for the faint of heart, that. But I think the risk was worth the reward both times. I mean, especially the first time, it moved me from being viewed as like a vendor, right, to being independent and, I guess, thought leader, if you want to call it that. But it truly did open up so many more doors for me that I never expected.
Well, and at what point, because you started getting named as one of the most influential voices in accounting, and I know you, and it was probably like, really? Because you're obviously you're very giving, you're always welcoming, you're always like trying to give advice, and then you start getting recognized as, man, you're influential, you're changing the profession. When did you realize that you were actually having not only an effect on tech, but you were starting to shift and make changes to the profession?
Well, I would say like 10 years ago, I was running Blue Ocean Principles, and I was invited into the top 25 thought leader group, which is a very small group when you think about this giant profession. They have a symposium where they meet annually, and it really was like where they would induct someone to the Hall of Fame. And I was the youngest person ever added to that group. And I looked around and I was like, wow, these are all the luminaries that I've been following for years. And the same year I got put into it was when Ron Baker got put into it. And I remember we had like a sidebar, and I just, the fact, because the group selects who gets added, so the fact that they had selected me as their peer, it was and still is a great honor. But to your point about changing the profession, I don't know that I believe I even still do shape the profession. I would say that I do understand that I've got a great network and built a platform. So I just tried to use it for good and intentional purposes that hopefully just help bring some clarity and improve the profession in a meaningful way.
Well, that's great. And I still, I say that you're having a pretty big voice, and maybe even not behind the scenes. I think, I don't know if people realize how much just helping behind the scenes that I don't think a lot of people realize. Talking about, you're at CPA.com, you've done that for years, and then you decide to shift to the current, role you're in today.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit more about what's getting you excited today about the profession. What things do you see in the horizon that, we're gonna dive in a little bit into the AI and some of the things and shifts that you see coming, and what gets you What gets you excited about the what you're doing today and the opportunities ahead, and what things are giving you kind of pause and like are we creating Skynet and it's going to self actualize one day, and then all of a sudden we get Terminators all over the place.
Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of sit in between two worlds. Last March, I joined Be Radical, which, if you know Pascal Finette, that's his company. It's an amazing organization where I get to work with incredible people that think bigger about just what are early signals, how do those impact things, what are different implications at such granular levels, how does it impact opportunities, how does it create challenges. And we work with clients of all different shapes, sizes, and industries. And then I just launched the AI Native Accounting Foundation. It kind of spun out of the podcast that I launched last year that just had tremendous response. So the foundation work is definitely where I'm more grounded here in the profession. So what I'm super excited about, I'm probably a little biased about at the same time, since I just launched a foundation for educating around AI. So AI is kind of what's got my hook right now. But the transformation around any kind of emerging technology is always going to be exciting for me. And AI is the hot thing right now. In 5-10 years, it'll be something else.
Uh, Absolutely. And so, what do you see? And diving into that, because obviously excited about AI, excited about all this. I guess what I want to consider unleashing a creativity that I think before we were like, and I'm going to talk specifically in the accounting profession. A lot of times, we were so bogged down in just getting the mechanics done of financials and compliance and all these other things. I think there's the heart of a lot of accountants and CPAs out there. They really truly want to help the businesses. They really want to help their clients. But the time that was consumed in getting just to a point where you could actually do some advice, it was hard. And now the next evolution of AI and AI agents is starting to release some of that compliance time to shift to more bigger thinking opportunities for accountants. Where do you see this for the profession shifting from the mechanics? And don't get me wrong, everybody laughs. I like doing a good bank rec every now and then, like everybody else. I'm that geeky. But as we start to see the profession shift and the opportunities for, there's other companies, like for example, I'll do a shout out to Digits. They're getting to almost the euphoric 100% close rate, and they're getting close. How do you see now the shift in the profession since you've been with it so long? Where do you see what's the next kind of journey, the next frontier that you see coming, for the accounting profession?
And I agree with you. Digits is I work with them as well, and they are an incredible company. As far as next frontier, it's tough. It's like, I think the way we work and with agents is obviously going to completely transform over the next few years. I see a genuine shift happening in knowledge work, how it gets done, and in productivity. I think, just in being honest, I think right now we just have to get through like what is hype and what is real progress. And I see that we're literally living in two realities at the same time, where you have both, where there is a lot of hype, but there is also a lot of progress over here. So imagining what the next frontier is, I think we have to first focus on the humans and how we're working with all of these machines. I think it's completely changing the expectations that the clients have of firms, or at least it will be, whether they're having those tough conversations yet or not. If you think about even just from a fintech standpoint, a solution is delivering to the client financial information before the CPA firm can even pick up the phone to talk to their client, it's going to change that whole relationship. But on a positive note, and to your point, not so much on the compliance side, but on the advisory side, if the systems are delivering far more visibility and deeper data insights for the advisors, I mean, that better understanding of your client is invaluable. So it elevates the conversations, it elevates the value. So yeah, I think it kind of transforms all of those relationships, and we'll see. I think that the tech is going to automate. I think we're underestimating how much the tech is going to automate in the long term. And we're all paying a little too much attention to the headlines about it replacing workers, I should say. So sometimes I just think we need to take a deep breath and focus on what's hype and what's reality.
Exactly. I hear over and over again, AI is not going to replace your job, but I've heard it repeated multiple times from multiple people. AI is not going to replace your job, but the person knows how to leverage it. Yeah, the person who knows how to leverage it and use it will have an advantage.
An advantage, and I do think the work that people do in this profession and how it's done is going to change very rapidly. I do believe that. It's just upskilling, and it's going to be new needs and new client conversations. So that to me is probably the next frontier, and where we need to be focused is the human layer.
Well, and again, as a recovering CPA, we all love change so much. Talk to me a little bit about. I talked to somebody the other day, and this is what I've heard too, a couple of times. Oh, we've lived through this before. When they came out and they started doing X, or the putting accounting books in the cloud, all these transformations, and they go, yeah, this is always, we've heard it, we lived through it. This is nothing different. And what I was trying to at least guide them is that I think this time, we've lived through changes in the profession, but this time it's different because it's not tools. You actually have agents doing work. And can you expand on that? Like, do you think that this transformation, like you just kind of touched on a little bit, it's not doing the work easier, it's literally going to change the work? Can you kind of expand on a little bit of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I do see similarities when I compare the big transition to the cloud. The similarities that I see are that people had very similar concerns back then. You had the exact same, data security, access, learning a new system, like the same kind of concerns existed. But I agree with you that it's not the same in terms of what we're seeing of how it truly impacts a firm and the work that they do. Like moving to the cloud didn't change a workflow. It didn't change who was doing the work. Whereas AI absolutely does. That's the whole point of it, right?
Yeah. And, with that aspect, what are you seeing, because you're with these big thought leaders, and these people are seeing these signals like years, well, I would say years ahead, but now, I mean, it's like literally the signals are like weeks ahead.
You can't keep up. I
know. How are you going to, any suggestions, or what are your perceptions of how are people going to, the change management piece of it? Because I just know that my experience with some of let's just say there's some other partners in firms that are just, hey, I'm getting close enough to the retirement. I've put my dues in. I'm just going to ride this one out. What do you have for the next wave? Do you think that they're more change adaptive, or do you think that there's going to be a bigger, just this is too much for people to handle because the change is happening so fast?
Oh gosh, I have so much on this. So first, I will totally agree with you that there are some senior leaders that have that, I'm just going to ride this out. I was speaking actually at an event, And I got done, asked for Q&A, and a gentleman raised his hand and said, "You just convinced me to retire 10 years earlier." And I was not trying to scare anyone. I was just talking about the capabilities, right? So that's unfortunate. I say for those folks, firms should be working on reverse mentoring and having some of the younger generation and the emerging leaders to mentor up. They're much more comfortable with technology, and hopefully you don't want to end up, I have this real fear that we're going to end up with, like in organizations, two workforces, an AI enabled one and an AI feared one. And that doesn't work well, right? When you're talking about change management and how an organization operates, that's going to create very siloed systems and some being very left behind. So that was to your first point. I also think that there is a real opportunity for these firms to recognize that, first of all, if you have staff that are digging in their heels and they're fearful, what is that saying about the culture that you're building? How are you delivering that message? And are you just out there, the leaders, saying, we're behind and we've got all this FOMO, everybody else has press releases and things going on, we just need to implement AI for the sake of implementing AI? No, you need to define the problems and have everybody be a part of that conversation. They're all stakeholders in your organization, so getting them involved a little earlier on. I think the next generation, though, to your last point, is that with them, no, they're going to expect it. It's not even that they're going to be more adaptable to it. It's that they're going to expect it. You have to think, when I hear people say, oh no, I won't use AI, it's like, you're already using AI if you have a smartphone. And the younger generation, they're starting in middle school, if not younger. And that's just, when you start that young and it's part of your normal usage as a consumer, it translates into your business expectations. And that's where we're moving.
So, and just kind of to dovetail on that too, there is such massive, so we've got this technology change, but it's kind of this tsunami that's hitting the profession all at once with all this change. Yeah. We've got private equity recognizing, I think that they recognized an undervalued profession of the accounting profession, recognize it. So now you've got consolidation and firms being consumed. So you have that change, and then you got now the terms like alternative corporate structures, and you got all this disruption going on. I talk to firms every day, and then we're having to merge another firm in. So you got now culture changes. We've got all this technology. I was on a call today with 100 CAS leaders, and they're just saying there is so much technology coming out so fast that we've got technology fatigue. And then on top of all that, I have a chance to talk to some of the business schools. Accounting, when you talk to graduate students and everything like that, it's, well, I don't want to do that. I want to go do this. And, never, not to worry, we're bringing sexy back to accounting. You can trademark that. But what do you think with all that change? The other thing too is that, from the people and technology and the firms you talk to, do you have any advice for now? And then, oh, by the way, on top of all that, a lot of people don't know, 75% of partners in accounting firms today are at retirement age. So you got this huge bubble of all this knowledge and just tribal knowledge walking out the door. You've got a shortage of staff. Technology's coming in and disrupting everything. And then you add a layer of consolidations. Do you have any advice for those to, kind of stay calm? Good things are coming.
Yeah, it's funny. I just interviewed last month Dan Hood, because he had the new Accounting Today top firm and regional leaders report. And when he shared with me two things, one, that every one of the 5 that got added to the top 100 list this last year, they were all PE backed. And the other stat that was staggering was that firms, the large firms, even the big four, had decreasing partner numbers. And what he said is, to your point, that so many are retiring out and they're just not replacing them. They're not adding more partners into all of those positions. So it is changing, I think, what it means when the young people come in about how they look at, typically, think about it. You go into a firm and you're there till you make partner and then you retire out.
Yeah.
But if that's not a track anymore, or it's less likely of a track, does that mean they bounce around to firms more often? And because, like, in tech, if you're at a
Yeah.
company 3, 5, 7 years, you move on to the next. Does it become like that in accounting, which it traditionally never was? It's interesting, but I will say, so my nephew, he's also at the University of Arizona, and he had entered as a finance major a few years ago. And I asked him to talk to one of my friends, Tom Hood, and Tom was gracious enough and hopped on a call with him. And just this week, I found out he has now a double major of finance as well as accountancy. He's getting his CPA, and he just got his summer internship at EY. So yay, VJ.
Awesome.
I know, but I would tell young people, though, that, and this is stealing directly from the mouth of Barry Melanson, that whether the economy is good or it's bad, you always need your CPA. You always need your accountant. And so regardless, AI is going to change things, but this is always going to be a place that you're needed and that you're valued. And I think that can be incredibly rewarding.
Well, and to add to that, in the school systems today, one of the number one attributes in things they're trying to teach the next generation is financial literacy. And so anybody that has a concentration of that, and myself, trying to be like pro accountant, pro CPA, is that any executive that's sitting in that boardroom who has a deep knowledge of accounting operations and finance historically has had just another chip in their back pocket because they could understand all the inner workings. So it gave you an advantage at the C level, and so it's a real good reason to keep it going, because it's to your benefit, because it bounces everywhere. Every business needs it.
And even if you're looking outside of public accounting into finance, the office of the CFO is growing. It's not shrinking.
And yeah, that's amazing. Well, man, I anytime I talk, I know that we could be talking for another hour on this, and there's so many other topics I'd love to share with you and get your opinions on. But the thing that I always do at the end of these shows is that literally, if so the whole theme of this is codified wisdom, so that people can learn from your experiences, and that they don't have to make the same mistakes that myself and other people, that they can look forward for somebody who's done that. What I ask is that if Kacee Johnson could fly back in time, I suddenly found and presented a time machine, and you could go back to some point in time to the younger Kacee, what advice would you give the now experienced, now go back to the younger Kacee? What would you tell her?
So I had an aha moment when Kimberly Ellison Taylor was on stage. We were at Engage, and we were doing Most Powerful Women award thing, and I was waiting off the side to come up and get my award. And Kimberly was talking, and I'll summarize, but basically she gave me an aha moment that I would love to tell my younger self, because I wasted so much time and energy with this. And that's that you are enough as you are. You don't have to try to be like what the reflection of the room that you're sitting in is. Having the confidence and knowing that you are enough as you are will save my younger self a lot of stress.
Oh man, what great advice. I mean, man. Well, well, we got to wrap it up, man. Like I said, I could keep going. I so appreciate your time. I know that, the people that watch and listen to this, I know that there's going to be multiple nuggets of wisdom that you shared on your journey, where things are going. So again, I want to thank you for your time today. And, for those listening, thank you. I hope that you did derive some sort of knowledge from this, so that you can take some piece of that and help move your career forward. And, I appreciate it. And, just stay tuned for next week's episode. And thank you so much for being on the show again.
The collective wisdom and lessons learned from these conversations have been the inspiration for the business guidance system at 4Impact Data, helping CPA firms grow client advisory services.